right, good morning. Hello, everybody. Oh, well, I guess good morning for me. If you're on the Pacific Coast, really good morning. But then if you're in Europe, good afternoon, all this fun stuff. So welcome to yet another Rust Gamedev Meetup. These occur on the second Saturday of each month. I don't know. Right now it's 1400 GMT, which is like great if you're in Europe. That's like nice and standard. But we in America have daylight saving time coming up, so that's about to change next month, I think, or tomorrow. It might even change. I don't know when it changes. But if you are here, we are going to be going through several different projects that are happening in the Rust Gamedev ecosystem. There's a lot going on. We just had the this month's newsletter come out, which I still have yet to tweet on the Gamedev account about. But there's a lot of really cool stuff happening. And so be sure to just, I see some stuff coming up in the chat already. So I'll be pointing out if anybody is working on some cool stuff. For myself, I started a new initiative with the project I'm working on this month with Veloren, where we used to have, or I mean, we still have code reading clubs where we read through the code base. But because I'm like, I don't do code review so often, I started just, I did one stream last week, and I'm trying to do one on Sunday where we just go through and like go through like a merge request on GitLab and code review it with the author, and so kind of having a fun time with that. But yeah, tell me what you've been up to this month. What types of stuff is going on in the products you're working on? So yeah, we have quite a few speakers today. Oh yeah, so shout outs. I'll keep an eye on the Discord. I'll keep an eye on the Twitch chat and put anything up there. We got quite a few speakers. I'm working with a few speakers just to see if they're able to present today, just so the schedule might change a little bit, but it's looking pretty close to this. And we definitely have some really exciting stuff. We have quite a few new speakers today, and so I'm super excited to see which projects we'll be chatting about. So we will be back in a few seconds with the first presentation. All right, so first up today, we have Tog with us, who's going to be talking to us about their project Time Loop. Tog, you have the floor.
Yep. Hello, guys. Can you hear me well now?
Yes, sounds good.
Perfect. Let me turn on my camera. Here we go.
Yes, awesome.
Okay. All right, so a little bit of history. Some of you may remember a few months ago, I was presenting another project called Drone Target. And the original idea was to do a demo for Dotrix, a game engine on Rust. The problem with that project was that I think I didn't like the concept, and I'm not too much into space team. So I actually somehow abandoned that project and started a new one. But the core idea is still the same. So it's a demo for Dotrix that is meant to be a playable game. And actually, like some of you may find a lot of similarities when I start showing the game. Yeah, so that's a little bit of history. Now about the game itself. So the concept, it's called Time Loop, and I'll probably start showing it to you now. So it's kind of puzzle-like game. So you need to pass a quest. Here, what you have that you just need to find a way how to jump over this wall, and you can do some stuff. For example, now I activated the trampoline, and what I'm doing when I press space, I can revert the time back. So actually, it goes back in time and repeats exactly the same steps which I did before. And now when I have this trampoline activated, I can switch to it. And when I resume the space, it starts repeating the steps it did before. And I can do some additional actions from different objects. So for example, now I can activate this trampoline when the ball is over it. And that's how you can solve these small puzzles. And yeah, I'm successful. So I passed the wall. And I think now I should be, yeah. So you see the level is passed. And that's basically it for now. It's super simple, but I think the main work at the moment was around the physics and around this rewinding the time, which I think is a cool feature. I really enjoyed working on this, and just the way how implemented it's not super trivial, but I wouldn't say it was super complicated. So that's about it from the game itself. I think there are two more things which I wanted to say. First, just to tell that I quite like this idea when, for example, Ilya, my friend, he is working on the engine, the Dotrix, and in parallel, I'm working on the game. So the way it works, that there are some new requests coming from the game. I'm telling him, hey, I want to do something like this, and it's not yet available. So it's actually that this engine is becoming driven by some, I wouldn't call it real projects, but sort of real projects. I think this is the right way to do that, rather than just developing an engine. And I know that Ilya has his own project in mind, but of course his project is much bigger. So I'm sure that in the future there will be more stuff like this. Yeah. Also, I think I was saying it last time that both of the games, and I think the drone target will be, I will not be working on this anymore, so I will focus on this time loop. So it has this physics engine behind the scenes, so it's Rapier. I think that's the only thing that is not yet part of Dotrix. The rest of the game was built just looking at Dotrix examples, and I think it's a nice demo showing that the engine is working. You can already build a playable game out of it. And yeah, I think from the new features that, for example, when I was working on this one, there was a missing feature that I needed to export vertices to create this collider, which is representing the terrain, and it was not yet available. So, but like talking to Ilya, we introduced this new feature to the Dotrix. It's just an example of what I was saying before, that you can really start working on a game. If you miss something, you can basically contact the author of the engine, and it kind of works very well. The next steps for this one, first, actually thinking or considering to submit a video with this game to this Rust Gamedev showcase. Of course, I want to make it a bit nicer. I don't know, maybe I'll play with the textures, the models, and everything. I'm not sure how much I can do in 1 week, but that's a plan. I also want to see if it's possible to connect it to Dotrix editor, so one could easily design these levels, different ones. Of course, the one you see now is super simple, and it was done manually without, like, I basically designed it in Blender and exported it as is. So to connect it to some editor would be really cool feature. So you can place the objects in the game and so on from there. And of course, think of some more interesting scenarios to really make a level which is hard to pass. So you should think about it. Then different types of objects and some collectible stuff. I don't know, destructible stuff, and so on and so on. And I think that's about it. Yeah. So thank you very much, and I'll be happy to chat later about it.
Nice. And I just wondering a few things for myself. So I think I really like this idea of someone who wants to focus on working on the engine to really build out the what they want to see engine wise, but then also the the ability for you to be able to come in and work on stuff. And I think we see this with probably quite a few of the Rust Gamedev engines. Most of the engine developers aren't working so much on their own stuff, but I mean, we saw it recently with the Bevy Jam. I know Cart worked on a game for that, and I know I think Mr. Dimas who is working on the Fireox engine is also working on a game inside of it. So it's super cool to see like the little bit of when you can come in and show off what type of stuff's going on. But I think what I'm sort of curious about is what's so with what you're able to do right now, like you're able to show off like quite a few of the mechanics of the game and stuff, or I mean mechanics of the engine. But do you see this more as a demo, or are you thinking of like what you can do to make this into a full like releasable game?
Yeah, so when I say demo, I mean actually a playable game. So I'm not sure how far it will go into, but I really want to have something that people could potentially enjoy playing. So it's not like what I'm doing now is kind of silly stuff. I know it's like super simple and trivial, but I really want to reach a level when you have a level which is kind of hard to, you need to think about it, how to go through it, like what are the tweaks and so on and so on. So at least this level would be like a minimal, but then we will see. So if if it gets some attention, if people like it, of course, I think there are plenty of ways how you could develop these kind of things. But
Yeah.
I really like. I think just one comment. What I really enjoy about this is it's really like in I don't know. It's been a month and I didn't work on it very hard. It was like, I don't know, evenings, as everyone of us is doing. Like in a month, I could do it's already playable, right? So like you saw that the second turn I actually failed to pass the wall. So you need to at least try a little bit. But yeah, there is much more to come, and hope next month I will show you more.
Yeah, that's great. And I think one thing I'm also curious about is we've seen this mechanic of being able to go back in time in other games. And I think it was like John Blow did a talk on Braid and how it was achieved. But what are you using to sort of like keep track of the state so that you can go back in time?
Yeah, I think here Rapier comes very handy. So it's actually allows you to do the snapshots of the state of the entire physics engine. So that's what I do. I actually record all these states when you go back in time, it actually just goes through those states. And then to rewind it, like to play it back, you cannot record the states anymore because you start changing stuff. So for example, what's happening here, so you go through the trampoline and then you actually add extra forces. For example, by activating the trampoline, you have extra force. So those states are not valid anymore. So you need to actually simulate it when you play when you play it backwards. You need to simulate it again. So that's how it works. And so the way it's implemented, that you simply record all the steps for the ball, like all the forces that were all the actions that player did, and then you on top of it you can apply extra forces, extra actions. And again, Rapier seems very nice tool for exactly this, because it provides you with deterministic simulations. So it actually, if you play with it, you'll see that the ball passes exactly the same path when you simulate it over and over again. There are some complications with this, and for now it's resolved very simply. So I use a fixed time step, and I'm not really sure how I'm going to resolve it in the future once I want to have like a not, because the frame rate is kind of floating a bit. So yeah, but these are all the future stuff.
Okay. Yeah, this is some pretty cool stuff. I think I haven't used Rapier myself, but I mean, looking at this demo, it looks very clean. And yeah, so I mean, it looks pretty functional for any type of physics you'd want to do. Yeah, so I'd really love to see where this can go in the next month. And yeah, hope to see you back here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Awesome. All right. Oops, I have not taken. There we go. Yes, now it's just me. All right. So next up, we're going to have Frederick come in and talk to us about DIMS. And so, Frederick, I will bring you onto the stage. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So my name is Frederick, and I'm working on DIMS with 3 other people, or since last week, 3 other people. We've been 2 people for past year, and I've been the only programmer working on it, but we're starting to grow a little bit. But I'll give you some background on what this is. So let's do this. So DIMS is, the idea is basically to build the Warcraft 3 editor of open world games. I don't know if any of you ever used the Warcraft 3 editor, but we really loved that ease of building something cool for the RTS genre when we were young. And we felt like, okay, why haven't anyone done this for open world games, like being able to build your own Red Dead Redemption or Witcher or something like this with super ease? So we figured that, like, yeah, let's try it. Let's give it a go. And another way of thinking about it is that we're kind of giving you a living world, a terrarium to play around with. And this is a concept from our artists of how it might end up looking, or the direction we're working in right now. And I wanted to show you a screenshot of what it looked like a few weeks ago, because I'm going to show you a demo of how it looks now as well. But you'll notice that I've ripped out all of the stuff since then, so we don't have any trees or water anymore right now, but it will come back in a minute. But yeah, let's show a quick demo what it looks like right now. So I'll go in here and create the world, and I'll create a cell here. And what you can do from here is that you can kind of create more of these cells. And then you can pick a brush, and you can kind of start to sculpt your world. And right now we're just working with kind of the rock brush here. And if I go into the first person view, you can actually start to move around this world and see what your creation looks like. And you know, we wanted to go a bit further than that, so I also implemented a way to add soil on top of your rock here. And what's cool here is that the soil is actually a different layer than the rock. So if you remove the soil, it will reveal the rock beneath it. And what you can do as well is they kind of erode. There's an erosion brush, which will erode away with water erosion the soil. And as I mentioned, this is like a super in progress version of it. I also wanted to quickly show that we also have this build mode where you can start to place items into the world. And oh yeah, it's definitely a bit bugged right now. And once you've placed items, you can do things like adding scripts to them. So for instance, on this one, we can add events every 10 seconds, and we can do something like rotate it. Maybe we'll do like this. And it's not going to work very well right now. Yeah, well, it's moving. Oh, okay, it's got a weird pivot. And there are a couple of other fun objects to play around with. There are motors and hinges. All of this built with physics. And none of it actually works right now, unfortunately. So it's a bit hard for me to demo. But maybe I can come back someday and show you guys more of it. We do also have a CSG system in the works. So you can kind of start to craft combinations of items. So I don't know if it's very easy for you guys to see, but this guy actually cuts this guy out, and we can bake them together, and you can easier see that created the new geometry from that. So I think that's pretty much on the demo. I wanted to talk a little bit about the tech as well. We built this on top of WGPU physics in Tokyo. Built a custom ECS for this with change detection and some other fancier stuff like GPU state and networking, shadowing type of stuff, and serialization. There's a React-like UI framework and a Firestore-like database for this with a real-time database. And there's the beginnings of a simple GPU-driven renderer, and a bunch of other stuff that you would just expect in a standard engine, like skin meshes, mesh loading, asynchronous asset loading, networking, multiplayer, cascading shadow maps, and a whole ton of other stuff. It's almost too easy to build stuff in Rust, I feel like sometimes. I also wanted to show a bit of code. So here's how we would define components within the DIMS engine. Of course, this is like mainly for us developing it. For the users, they'll initially just use it as an application. Eventually, we would like to move it in, make it open source somehow as well, and make it possible for people to build on top of it. But yeah, this is how it looks like for us to define components. And to define systems on top of components, you have something like this where you can say that when some of these components change, you want to update some property. Pretty standard ECS stuff, I think. And I mentioned that there's a whole GPU side of the ECS, and this is where we kind of define those bindings. And what you can do with that is that you can actually say that some of these components should also live on the GPU side. And that comes in very handy when you want to build shaders and materials and stuff, because you can actually access components on an entity from your shader. In this case, I'm doing a get entity color for the entity I'm working with here. And I also wanted to quickly show a UI, a demo of how the UI works. So if we start this thing here, here's a small application. It's a to-do list, and when nothing is checked, it will show me this state. And then once I check one of them, the state changes to this. When I check both of them, it completes. And if you uncheck them, it kind of goes back to the state. And quickly, what this looks like is it's basically inspired by React. It looks very much like React. You have parts, which would be components in React, and then you have hooks that you use to define state. So in this case, the state is the dishes and the laundry items in the checklist. And then you can have UI components, the checkbox, the text that says laundry, and so on for the next one, and then a simple match to determine what the text output should be. And let's see here. Oh, yes. And finally, I wanted to mention that we have funding for this, and we're looking for people to join our team. So if you're interested in working on how we can, build the Warcraft 3 editor of open world games, then reach out to me or to Tobias. Here's my email, and here's Tobias' email, and you can find me on Twitter as well. And yeah, I think that's it. If there are any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Wow, I think a lot of what you said resonated with me a lot from like the beginning. I've played a lot of Warcraft 3 in the past, and though I haven't gotten too into the map editor, but I definitely played Warcraft 3 for hundreds of more hours because other people got into the map editor. So I think that's like a really nice place to start by. And also, I think a few things that I heard that are pretty interesting, and I kind of want to hear about a little bit more is like you described CSG and you described erosion. So we do with Veloren, we do erosion, and this allows us to have like nice mountains and stuff like that. And so the erosion system that you showed was sort of like a paintbrush that we could do against mountains. And do you foresee like more complex erosion that people might be able to do, like be able to just generate mountains over time based on tectonic plates and stuff like that by chance?
I mean, I would love to build that. That's, all of that stuff is stuff that I would, yeah. And we have, to be honest, we have like a long list of stuff like this that would be fun to build that I would think would be also awesome for players. I mean, imagine being a player and entering this world. You can take two tectonic plates, push them together, and you're like, okay, this is my world now.
Exactly.
So, yeah, definitely on the roadmap. I don't know when, but I would love to.
Perfect. And then another question from chat. I love the GPU powered ECS style. Is the ECS archetypical?
Yes, it is. It doesn't support sparse sets or anything, but I'm doing a lot of profiling, and basically it's mostly GPU blocked, or it's spending all of its time waiting for WGPU to drop the render pass. So we haven't had any need for sparse stuff yet.
Nice. And I think one thing that, or a few things that you said, or like that showed off that really resonated with me. One was the UI. I really like, and maybe this is like not super difficult, and I just haven't seen this pattern myself. But I've used YEW a bit, like the web front end in Rust, and it has like a React like way of doing things. But I think one thing that I saw in yours that I really liked was the pattern matching on state to determine what should happen. And so maybe that's just as easy to do in other ones, but I thought that was like a very clean way of handling what you want like based on the state and stuff like that. And so when, I mean, thinking about UI takes a lot of work. What kind of thought has gone into this process for you? What experiences have you had that have helped you define the UI framework?
Yeah, so I've worked on a lot of different code in my career, and some of it has been like web UI stuff. And in the web UI world, I tried a lot of different things as well. And for me, the easiest or like the most natural one was always React in the end. So when I started doing UI stuff for this, I just figured, okay, I mean, I'm not smart enough to come up with a new one. I'm just going to copy React and put it in Rust basically, and it seems to work for me.
Awesome. Yeah, so just to finish it off here, I think one thing that you said that I really like as well is it's almost too easy to build stuff in Rust sometimes. I think that's a pretty quotable line right there. But yeah, I think going forward, I'd love to see this open source and have people be able to come and work on their own projects. And of course, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, you just announced it in February, right? Like you've been working on DIMS, but you just released the first video in February.
Yeah, that's correct. We started working on, like, I worked on the engine like a year and a half ago. Perhaps I started work on it, but that was purely as a hobby project. And then last summer, me and a friend actually started working on it as something that we saw as, okay, here we could actually make a product out of it. And then we kind of put that video out a few months ago, or about a month ago.
Nice. Yeah, and I think it's super exciting to have like this opportunity for someone to maybe apply and be able to work on this project as well. It's always great to see more jobs in the Rust Gamedev ecosystem. So yeah, I think it's really great that we're doing that. So hopefully we can see you back here in the next few months with some awesome updates. And yeah, good luck with the project.
Would love to be back, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, so next up we are back with Dusty, who's going to be talking to us about Noumenal. So Dusty, I will add you to the stream here and you're good to go.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. I've been working on an app called Noumenal. And so here it is. I'll walk you through a quick demo. I guess to describe quickly what it is it's designed to be a 3D modeler that is fun to use. It's kind of enjoyable to use. I'm sure, or I imagine many of you have used other 3D modeling tools, and they're not often easy to work with. So to quickly give an overview, what you're able to do is just reach into the screen and modify shapes by touching them. So these circles are showing my fingers where they're touching on the screen. And so you can move them around, rotate them as expected, and even grab 3 different points and move around in 3 dimensions. So this was inspired by some experiments in VR and how I could bring that to a flat surface. So in addition to the movements you see, you can grab the screen, move things around, manipulate the camera in that way. So this is based on CSG, if any of you are familiar with that. I've designed a CSG engine that is incredibly fast. You can do things, hopefully this won't crash, but you can add and subtract shapes. Whoops, scaling mode. So you can see that the shapes are actually, it's subtracting the blue shape from the red one. You can see the teeth there moving through. So I can perform intersection as well, all the basic operations. So you can see that those are the intersection of the 2 shapes. It's running at real-time speeds, 120 hertz. And furthermore, it has full physics. So if I turn on the cubes, you can see shapes are able to interact real time. And aside from just like fun use of that, you can turn on collision mode, which makes these shapes real, and you can sort of use that for placement so that shapes don't intersect. So that's kind of the basics of the app. In addition, you can, of course, share in a number of formats, GLTF or USDZ, which is common on the Apple platforms. And so to go into the technology used behind this, because this is kind of more of a technical setting, so this is built using Bevy. In addition to technology I've developed, and the physics engine as well is something that I created. So it's not using Rapier. So yeah, that's a quick overview. And then there's some new features that I recently added are pretty cool. So you can kind of simulate Minecraft, which is a bit fun, using this new tool, which flips a shape around another shape. And so that allows you can build blocky type things. But if Minecraft wasn't blocks, say I start with a pyramid, I can still do that. And so that gives me like any sort of shape that I want just by flipping and duplicating. So that's kind of a neat tool that I added recently. So this app runs on iOS. This is running on an iPad right now. And it even runs on a phone. Yes, it's running on an iPad Pro. So this is running on the M1 processor, which now is going to be available to a lot more iPads with the iPad Air. But this actually, I've tested this back on an iPhone 8. So my dad has an iPhone 8 and he's using it, and it runs decently well. So I've been able to reduce the power usage quite a bit. And so, yeah, that's just a short introduction. I guess I can show some things that I've created. This comes out large for some reason. I've created a camera, which is pretty cool. So the lens protector, the lens cap, or sorry, the hood, is kind of interesting because that's created by two cones stretched out and subtracted from each other, and then I take a cube and turn and subtract it from the front, and that gives that neat like pedal effect. The rest of it's pretty easy to figure out: cylinders, cubes. So that's a neat model that I've created. My test model that I use, so I use this, if you see the video in the help, I use this as sort of my test model. I've built this model many times from scratch. I use it to make sure all the functionality works. So it's made out of a cylinder and a bunch of spheres and cut out for the mouth. So you can see the creation of it in the video. But yeah, and you can even, I've used it to create everything here. Even letters are pretty easy to create. So it's really fun to be able to play with CSG at real-time speed. So you can really like see what you're creating as you do it. As sort of a comparison, I've compared this against other similar CSG implementations, Seagal being the large one. I have a test shape that I use, and it runs at about 13 seconds on Seagal, well, this was a while ago on an older machine, but about 13 seconds on Seagal and 40 milliseconds on that same machine using my technology. So yeah, I guess with that, are there any questions?
Yeah, so this is super cool. When you first said, am I able to do the presentation on the iPad, I didn't really understand why, because I didn't know this project, but this is super cool. So I think, I mean, a few things, obviously. Really impressive that you're able to get it working so nicely at like native speeds on the iPad. And also you can do optimizations and sort of figure out how you can try to improve this for other devices as well. And so I think when it comes to stuff like CSG or I mean, just like other stuff in general, what are the main things that you have to sort of either optimize for or think about when you're working on mobile?
So there's nothing specific to mobile in this case. It is using Rayon to split across to saturate all CPU cores, basically. So there's 8 core, I think 6 or 8. I think there's 6 cores. So it's able to saturate those pretty quickly. So I'm using Rayon for that. The particular way that the library is designed is that it's a massive divide and conquer type algorithm. So it's able to split that across the threads pretty quickly, all the way down to so that there's a lot of different layers that you're required to build to get CSG working. On the bottom layer, you need numerical stability, and that part is pretty hard. I would like to move that to GPU eventually, if possible, but I don't see a good way to do it. So you need to be able to arithmetic with stability, and then on top of that is convex hull, and then that's the building block for everything else. And so starting from the convex hull up, everything is parallel. So it splits everything recursively and just kind of splits it across the CPUs. Using Rayon, that's really simple. In fact, I only have one function that I call in Rayon, and that's join. Just kind of like a super tiny API surface there. I just call that one function. I do actually
magic.
call one other like outside of the library to set up the thread pool, but I just keep calling that join function, and that does it. It's amazing that actually works. I mean, to see how deep the call stack is, and to see it not choke at all is amazing. So I'm really impressed with Rayon. I developed this at first actually many years ago, and it was written in Haskell, and Haskell had something similar to be able to split across threads, but the performance is so much better on the Rust version, and I've made quite a few optimizations. I guess one interesting thing is to move everything possible into an iterator. So it's a massive amount of streaming. If you can do anything as an iterator, that's like a really good pattern, even if it doesn't make sense initially. So I guess one cool thing about how the numerical, it's called the adaptive arithmetic portion works, is that it turns numbers into streams. And the streams are streams of error, the error portion. So you get back an answer, and then you can say, okay, how accurate is it? Okay, here's the error from that. Okay, how accurate was that? And so forth, until you get the precision you need. So specifically for mobile, I did make quite a few optimizations to Bevy. So I have like my own fork that I maintain, and I keep pushing things up as I can. But one of the big things that I did to improve performance there is reducing the number of passes. Specifically, there was a clear pass that goes through and clears the screen every frame, and it did nothing else. So it would clear everything and then write it back to memory. Eliminating that pass saved 30% of GPU performance there. So I'm not entirely sure why that was so significant, but I can understand, like, the general intuition is the less you can move data, the faster it runs. And that's moving a lot of data for no good reason at all. So that was able to get good performance there. So yeah, it's just like lots of profiling, finding small things, sometimes big things. Another one was getting refresh rates down. So what this will do, you can't see it, but it's actually running at only 20 hertz right now. And then when you touch it, it switches back to 120 quickly. And when you turn on physics, you can't see that though, because if you look maybe really closely at the spinning animations, you put like your face up to it, you can see maybe a slight stutter. Or no, I think they went to 25 hertz to eliminate that. So it's pretty unnoticeable, but just doing that was pretty effective.
And so that can like really extend battery life on mobile, I assume, right?
Yeah, it can get warm. It used to get hot to the touch, but with optimizations, it can get warm. On a phone, that's more significant, of course. But it's very important because I really want, so I plan to release this soon, and I want to get it to the largest audience. So the iPad I have here is the latest, greatest iPad Pro M1, and that was like, can I even do it? And then so then I'm testing now on an iPhone 13, which is like a lot of people have an iPhone 13. It's not the Pro or anything like that. So imagine a lot of people have it. And then it's like, okay, can I go further? My dad's got like an iPhone 8, right? And then so I'm like, how far down can I go? And I'm actually talking with someone on Monday from Browser Stack. They have where you can test on, I guess, like all the different devices. So that would be interesting to basically push the bounds. Can I get down to a 6? I mean, ideally, I can support everything that runs the latest OS.
Yep.
And so one thing I did do, one concession I made is for older phones, it will actually, there's 3 levels of detail that, again, that are kind of hard to see, but you can notice them. Let me see if I can kind of trigger it. So when you see the meshes, you'll see it. I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but you'll see it slightly pop. What it's doing is it's levels of detail. When you're moving, it is to the lower level of detail, which gives nice smooth movement. But when you let go, things will kind of pop back into place. So there's 2 levels of detail. And on older devices, it will turn off the highest level of detail. But that one's almost unnoticeable. So yeah, I guess if you look real close at the eye, you can see there's 3 different pops. One, and then there's the last one.
Yeah, and so like the main goal behind this is that you can keep it super responsive. Like the biggest goal is responsive as you're moving it, and then it doesn't matter as much when it's stationary.
Yeah. So when you're moving, it's doing, of course, a lot of work, and then once it finishes, it gives you a high quality result. And so that's good for exporting, of course. But when you're moving it around, you just mainly need to get things in position. And so what it's doing is it's showing a wireframe, which is useful for when like you're subtracting, because you can't see the actual shape. So you need like a sort of transparent shape that shows the geometry. So yeah, the most important thing is the experience, like also the tracking. So this may not seem immediately complicated, but with one finger, it's obviously translation, 2 fingers, scaling and rotation. The interesting thing is with 3 fingers. So this is doing a raycast into the shape, and I can these circles that are tracking my finger are not.
Oh wow!
They are
not. Oh my goodness! It's the ones in the eye socket.
Yeah, these are placed on the shape. They're drawn as 2D, but what it's doing is it's projecting back from 3D to the screen and showing, which is why these were initially needed was as debugging. They're originally these ugly dots, but they're useful for demos and just like knowing what's going on.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So it's projecting onto the shape and then fitting the shape to my movements and then projecting it back. And if everything goes as expected, they follow exactly. They can. So in general, doing that is a nonlinear optimization problem. It's a quadratic optimization problem. So quadratic linear programming has been used, but I'm using something a little bit simpler than that, mainly because I didn't want, if you fit things too hard for this, there's actually 2 possible solutions for any input, and it can snap between the 2 of them. So to get the nice smooth movement, you have to limit how hard the solver works to match the input. But this is like 30 pages of math equations. I mean, trying different things and just working out the math, and I got something that works pretty well. Definitely. It uses singular value decomposition, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are coming up on time, unfortunately. Now, that being said, there are a lot of people in chat who have asked a lot of great questions as well. So for everybody, all the presenters, definitely come to the like the social hour afterwards where we just hang out in the Discord. I think that there's a lot more discussions around this. And yeah, even more questions coming in chat. But Dusty, thank you so much for this. I'd love to see this being released and show it to some of my artist friends. And so hopefully in the future, we can have that happen.
Thanks. One more quick thing is the beta is anybody interested, let me know. The beta is open, so I can if you have an iOS device, you can use this.
Awesome. Good stuff. I think I have like an iPhone 6 or something, so maybe I'll give it a try and we'll see.
That'd be interesting. I'd like to try it. All right.
Perfect. See you later.
Bye.
All right. Hello. So this is myself. I'm going to be talking a little bit about what's been going on with Veloren. So I'm not on the schedule. I just threw myself in because we're doing pretty nice on time today. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about the recent releases that have happened. So I'm on the multiplayer server right now. And I'm also interested if anybody in chat could tell me how as we go along, how the I don't know, like the frame rate is. I don't know, because I was streaming last week and I was like the 720p version of StreamYard, so it wasn't doing so hot, but maybe it's doing better now. Oh yeah, I've seen a picture of this, but I didn't know there was actually just a whole bunch of merchants hanging out behind this store. Anyways, this is Veloren. I don't know the last time I showed this off at the Gamedev Meetup was, but since then we've probably released like 0.11 and 0.12. And so some nifty things that have been going on in the last little while. One of the big ones is that there's been a lot of work done to like how villages are spawned, how there's new stuff around the map. And so if I take a look on the world map here, I don't know if I'll be able to easily find one, but we have this new area called Gnarling Forts. And so Gnarlings are just like a type of mob in the world. Oh yeah, we got one right here. Gnarling Fortification. And so if we were to go over there, and I might just do this in single player so that we can check it out, but there's like newly generated sort of like forts that we can go into. Now we've seen today in a few of the other talks, we've heard people talking about CSG and erosion and lots of this other stuff. And for Veloren, this is like something that, I mean, when I hear these, like the word CSG, I'm like, ah, yes, very, very nice. That is coming up in more places. And I don't know all the math magic behind it, but what it allows us to do is procedurally generate stuff in the village. So we have like the houses are CSG objects. And this allows us, or that allows the developers to talk in terms of, okay, we're going to combine a square with a triangle, and we're going to subtract another square in the middle, so we get like a hollowed inside, and then it gets rendered into, or I mean, I don't know what the term is. Like you go from like this conceptual idea of a square into our voxel cubes, and so it's like not upsampled. There's a word to describe like that transition, but now around the world as well, we've been seeing a lot more developers be able to come in and try out these different like CSG modeling techniques. And so we've recently started something, I think I mentioned it a little bit, but like the Veloren Reading Club, where we have developers who can come in and talk to us about what they've like what some of the core systems are and how they work and how people can code them. And we had one of these Veloren Reading Clubs where one of the main developers came in and spoke about CSG shapes and how you can build them yourself. And then from that, we had new contributors come in and try it out themselves, just because once you can play with the system, like the API, or I mean, the abstraction API, whatever you want to call it, that we have for it, really allows you to create stuff quite easily that you can spawn around the world. So I'm just going to load into single player just because I don't have my admin account set up on Veloren just yet. Or rather, I haven't copied my password, and it's a long password. And I have the debug stick here, and I can make it daytime. So let's go take a look at a Gnarling Fort, because this is one of the pretty exciting things. Now we'll notice that like the map that I'm on right now is the same as the server map. And that's just because our erosion is designed in a way where it's done before the map. I mean, yeah, obviously it's done before the map is built. I guess like you can, well, no, I guess you could just have, oh no, my screen just went down. Okay, we're good. You could have it like do erosion as the game is going on, but we do it all ahead of time. It takes like 10 minutes to generate a new map, so we just ship that to players. All right, let me fly over that way. So all of these mountains here have gone through a lot of passes of like tectonic uplift and I don't know all the other terms. Someone like read a paper. One of our developers read like something like scientific papers on like erosion, and then implemented a lot of it. All right, so we have arrived here at the Gnarling Fort. Let's see here. I won't be able to move too well. I think I'm invulnerable, so I should be able to walk in here and not have a problem. So we can see in this area, I'm just going to fly up again for a second. Hopefully it's not too stuttery or anything. But we can see a lot of shapes that are sort of like cylindrical and built a little bit different for each one. And so each of these is a CSG shape, which allows them to be tweaked and generated quite nicely to form this little fortification for the gnarlings. And as a player, you can go in here, you can explore. As you can see, I've got a lot of gnarlings following me, and they're probably going to attack me and all of that kind of stuff. And it's sort of surprising how they're all off in their own, like I don't know, they're like not mixing and matching. But let's see if we, I think we can go find. Yes, we got over here. We have one of the big golems. And so a lot of stuff has been done with getting these like gnarling forts in, and this is like one of the big features for the 0.12 release. We put out a trailer for 0.12 where we walk through a lot of the new features. Okay, I'm really convinced that everything of the same species hanging out together must have been a recent change that happened, because this was not happening like this before. But it's been like really cool kind of seeing new places like this being added. And I think in the future, if systems are set up to allow developers or any contributor to more easily come in and add areas like this, then we can get a lot more dynamic content around the world that is interesting to explore. And although we don't have like quest lines implemented yet, it could add for like a lot of content for players. So other than that, I'm trying to think of what other interesting things have been going on recently, or like I guess since the last time. I think we had like last time we showed stuff off, we had like the big physics changes and stuff like that. Oh yeah, there's a new type of, one sec, let me see if I can type this. Spawn a wild. Okay, we're gonna spawn some theropods. There's a different term, I think. Dragon and arthropods. Yes. Okay. So if you don't like spiders, then you're gonna have to like look away for a second. But I'll spawn. Wait, is this what I'm looking for? I'm gonna go do it where it's not as chaotic. All right, we'll spawn a few in here. We got like these. I'm busy. Lots of spiders looking around. We got some like fire spiders and stuff like that. So I know a lot of work has been gone into like the art of like creating these like these different species and stuff like that. And okay, so I don't like spiders in real life, but I find spiders in here really cute. Like I just like how like the blue one looks and the red one looks and stuff like that. And so yeah, I think it's really awesome that we have like such a great sort of connection with what the developers can do, and what the artists can do. So artists have like a really great way of going in and adding new types of mobs that can be spawned, and all of them are just like model files, I think. Now, I do know that there is complications as to what type of stuff goes into like making it so that arthropods can walk in a certain way or humanoids can walk in a certain way. Spiders in games are always cuter because they can't bite you in real life. Oh yeah, so now I want to put down some webs here. Yeah, so I'm trying to think. We have like a massive change log of stuff that's always changing a lot. So I think like one of my goals for the next release of Veloren is to like earlier on work towards like what we can put into the trailer, so we can show off like some of like the really big features more easily. I'm just gonna take a look through the change log here a little bit. Oh, there's like stuff that was done with water. Okay, we'll show off water, and then I'll end and pass this over to the next presenter. But let's go over to the lake over here. So new water shaders were added. So as you swim around, the water looks like really, really cool. All right, so once we go underwater, what's the control? Shift? Yeah, shift. Okay, there we go. So underwater, we got like I don't know all the fancy words for shaders and stuff like that, but like you got like light reflecting and stuff like that. You got, as you go deeper, it gets darker and darker. I'll turn on my lantern here, so maybe we can go down to the depths. I guess dark pretty quick. But at nighttime, midnight. There's like sometimes when you can see like bioluminescent things underwater, but I feel like they're either closer to the shore. Oh, there's a village right here. That's very nice. Because our villages are like completely procedural, then this one that has spawned on the water has merchant swimming and a very large foundation for this this hut. But I want to find a bigger, like I'm just gonna head over that way. All right. Because so we changed the map. So it used to be like a really big square, but we played around with some generation stuff so that you can have like a much more circular map. So as we can see, it's much more like a island, and it has like other islands off of it. So I think it's been worked on that we could have something like ships sailing around. We have airships already that can fly, but ships sailing around is a little bit different, I think. And so I think those are going to be integrated pretty soon. I'm wondering. Oh yes, okay. So we got some stuff here. It's just not lighting up too much, I think, but I really like the looks of the stuff underwater. Daytime, yeah. Okay, now this is like looking pretty cool under here. Yeah, but anyways, I just wanted to show this off just because we have a few extra minutes today. We had for our 0.12 release party, 195 people on the server at the same time at the peak, and so of course we always try to break this record. It was handling pretty well. So in the future, we might see like our goal is we could have 1,000 players on the same server. And this is of course like a beefy server. We're using Hetzner, and they have like 48 core AMD servers, and so we have those for a release party. But yeah, someday we hope to get that far. So sounds like frame rate looks pretty good. Rasterization or voxelization, yeah. So I suppose like if you have a CSG house, you're putting like CSG shapes together, like cubes and circles and stuff, then rasterization in the voxel sense. Frame rate's kind of whack. Yes, we were talking about like when I stream on OBS, it tends to be okay, but then bitrate on StreamYard kills it, so it's hard to know. Moving your frame rate around, yeah, okay. All right, yeah. So this is what's been going on with Veloren. Feel free to come check it out. Yeah, so I think I'll end it off here. If you want to come talk about Veloren, I'll be around in the hour after we finish up the stream today, and so feel free to come chat and check out some of the stuff. And we will be back in just a second with the final presentation of today. All right, so we are back with the final presentation. We have Kevin here, who's going to be telling us about the recent changes to Graphite. So, Kevin, I'll hand it over to you, and your camera's off, just so you know if you want to.
Yeah, I couldn't get the camera to work.
Hey, no worries. All right, well, I'll hand the floor over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, just in case you're not familiar with what Graphite is a concept, and over the past year, it has been in development for building a procedural, non-destructive, node-based graphics editor, something to replace 2D image editing that you might normally do in GIMP or Photoshop or Illustrator or Inkscape, and basically make something that's more procedural, more non-destructive, but still has some of those basic workflow attributes that make you very productive in the software I just mentioned. So in this past month, we have completed Sprint 12, and Sprint 12 is the completion of sort of wrapping up from the alpha release that we did a month ago, and basically working on some of the things that are moving towards the future, such as designing the node-based system, as well as making some polishing features for the existing release. So one thing we did was add a gradient tool, and this is actually the last vector-based tool for Graphite that's planned. And basically that means that everything except for the raster tools are now all implemented, so there are no missing tools. We now also have a new set of icons for the different layers, and those are the icons that will represent nodes in the future, but right now they are just representing layers in the layer panel. And additionally, we have a new group and a new layers button in the layer panel as well, and I'll show you that in a minute in the demo. But basically that just makes it easier to add groups and delete layers if you're not familiar with the keyboard shortcuts to do that. And then also we have a color picker widget in the properties panel, which makes it so you can change the color after the fact if you've already changed, or if you've already made a shape and you want to be able to edit the fill color or the stroke color, you can do that. And so that is basically most of the changes that we did to polish up the editor. And then additionally, we have made some redesign mock-up designs for the upcoming node-based system as it pertains to the layer panel and the properties panel. And I'll show you that in a second. and then also worked on some additional parts of the website. So here is the view of the mockup for the future node-based editor. So this is displaying a raster-based, not a vector-based, but a raster-based workflow in the future. But it looks like on the right side, we have the layer tree and the properties panel, and that's what this mockup has been improving. Let me get some water. Hold on a second. So on the right, you see the layer tree and the properties panel. And I think my mouse would work, hopefully. And I can point out some things. So we have the layer here, and this is called a layer or a group, and it contains a name that you can give it and a thumbnail displaying its preview of what it is. And then additionally, below it, we have these different nodes or functions, essentially, that apply something like motion blur, and they apply a transform, they apply a mask, they apply an image. So first, it basically reads from bottom to up because it's a stack, and you have an image. And this is something like, in this case, it's the imported photo that this jet was cut out of. Then we mask it. So basically, we cut out all the transparent background and leave it so it only has the jet, but not the transparent background. And that's based upon the mask input of this shape here. Then we have the transform, which basically gives it a position and a rotation, and you can then apply an X and Y offset or anything like that. And you can then see that here. It has an X and Y location of 986 by 1450. It has 0 rotation. It's got a 1-to-1 scale, and then these are its dimensions. And then there are some little widgets here that you can also set to, say, the basis. So the basis is the center, and the rotation allows you just to quickly click and drag to set the rotation and stuff. And you can constrain the aspect ratio. Anyway, so that's how the transform works. And then motion blur basically applies the blur by a certain amount. You can't see that, or actually you can. The direction, basically the angle of the blur is 10 degrees, and then the distance of the blur, how much it smears the pixels across, is 50. And then we also apply a strength based upon this mask that's given to it. And this mask is kind of like an argument to it. And what you're seeing here is actually equivalent to the node graph. I've not made the mockup for the node graph, but that's coming up soon. And that essentially is going to be equivalent to this tree representation, but more in graph form. So hopefully that's a quick overview of how the layer-based approach to the node system will work. And again, there will be equivalent. Layers and nodes will essentially be two different ways of viewing exactly the same data, and you can switch between them at any time. So now I will move over to the quickly demoing the website. So last time we had basically a very minimal mockup for the website. Now this is fully live on graphite.rs. We have the homepage. You can switch between these. We have some additional things here. I'll just be quick and scroll through it. This is live now, so if you want to sign up for the mailing list and get emails whenever we have a major release, we're probably going to have just a few emails every year, maybe once per major milestone release. But feel free to go to the website and add your email here, and we won't spam you or anything, just send you very occasional announcements. We have the blog, and now we also have, we have the blog here, displaying the different posts. We have an entire article on how to contribute. So I would highly encourage you to check this out and maybe just download the repository for Graphite and give it a try. Get it compiling, and maybe you can add some very small features or something like that and submit a pull request. We also have some information on the license. We have details on the logo. So if you want to use the logo for community purposes, feel free to grab it from here. If you know anyone from the press, feel free to send them over to this and reach out on the contact page. Then we can go over and click on launch and go to the most recent version of the editor. So we have some tidied up tools here. Previously, we had the raster tools that were visible, but now they're kind of grayed out to make it clear that they are coming in the future, but they're not available yet. But now let's go ahead and show off some of the gradient tool. So if I make some interesting shape with a pen tool, perhaps, now I can give it a gradient. So let's pick, I don't know, kind of an orangish color, and also pick maybe a purplish color. And then I can go ahead and click and drag and make a gradient here. And now say I want to actually go change these colors. So I can use the color picker and change any of the color on one side of the gradient or on the other side of the gradient. And I can even do this for text. So if I go to the text tool and say, graphite is awesome, and let's make that bigger. I'm actually using Blender style hotkeys where I just hit S and then I can drag it, or I can even hit X or Y to constrain to the axes here. So now I have, you can see the fill color is just this, and I can change the fill color if I want, but now I can also use the gradient tool. So go to the gradient tool and click and drag, and we have gradient across the color across the width of that. So now also I can go ahead and delete this layer with the delete key, or sorry, with either the delete key or the trash can icon there. And I can also go and create a new group with this new group button and combine them together, or add them to the group. And then if I select the group and drag it around, then they're both moving around together. So I think that covers all of the new features. Mostly it was just polishing, as we have been working this week on, this past month, on designing more of the node graphs things. But that is, I believe, all of the main features for what we added to polish up the editing experience. So this is now the minimum viable product version of vector editing. So feel free to actually go make artwork, and we'd appreciate it if you post some of that in our Discord channel. We might even feature it on the website if it's nice, because we do have some blank spaces on the website that could use some great artwork. So feel free to make something and post it there, and we'd love to showcase it. So yes, back to the slides. So please get involved. Feel free to check out editor.graphite.rs, which is the website to visit the live editor. And then also, if you want to be on the development branch, which has slightly more cutting edge features, but might be less stable, you can also use dev.graphite.rs. Go to the website, graphite.rs is the website. Please check it out. And then also join us on Discord. You can go to discord.graphite.rs, and that will redirect you to the Discord invite. And join us on the community. And feel free to pick up any of the beginner-friendly issues on GitHub. We'd really be happy to provide you some mentorship, give you a little bit of an introduction to the code base, and maybe you can start out with some small features and maybe work your way up from that if you're interested. So with that, thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you next month.
Awesome. So a few questions in chat. So I'm not sure if I've asked this before, but is the undo redo history stored as a line or as a tree?
Currently it's a line, but it's very temporary. Our plan in the future actually is to basically re-implement Git and have an entire system where every time you make changes, that gets automatically included as a Git commit. I mean, and not as an actual Git commit, because we're not literally using Git, but we're basically re-implementing Git. So every time that you do any kind of change, that gets stored as a commit. And that essentially, that change is your modification to the node graph. So if you use the select tool, you drag a layer to a different position, or you use the arrow keys to move it to a different position, that new position then gets stored as the updated transform value. So remember how we had the transform node in the properties panel, and that had an X and Y position. If you use the arrow keys or you drag it around, it's going to update that transform, which actually updates the contents of the layer graph or the node graph. And essentially that new state of the node graph gets stored as a Git commit, or as the equivalent of Git commit. And then you have an entire history, and then that could be a branching tree-like history.
Awesome. Yeah, so it's always great to see how Graphite's going. And I think as well, like the website is definitely looking pretty professional. So yeah, I have been wanting to get to playing around with some Graphite and trying some art stuff myself. And so, yeah, it definitely looks like it's at the point where you can be quite creative. We've seen really creative stuff in the past with Graphite already. So
yeah, but now that we're no longer constrained to basic primitive shapes like ellipses and hexagons and lines, we can actually do things with the pen tool now. And now you can even apply gradients to them and things like that, and modify the colors more easily. So it's a lot easier and less constrained now to make actual artwork of your own design.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. Well, good stuff. So I hope to see more from Graphite next month. And thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you.
All right. So that is the end of today's content from all of the speakers. And so I'm going to go through some stuff. But one thing I wanted to show off first as well, I'm going to go big picture mode here, is I have one of these bad boys, and we were experimenting. I think if I show it like this, we were experimenting with getting Veloren to run on the Steam Deck. And so it worked out pretty nicely. We have Veloren as like a flat pack on, I guess, a flat pack store. And so it can be installed pretty nicely, but there's some interesting little quirks that we're working through to get it working up to snuff. And so it's more stuff on our end than it is on the Steam Deck, just like with how we do like controller stuff. And but yeah, I think if anybody else wants to try out their game on the Steam Deck, do feel free to hit me up, because I'd love to try out some other stuff. But hopefully sometime in the future we can have an easy release for people to play Veloren on the Steam Deck and have some pretty cool features through that. So announcement wise, newsletter, it's out as always. Well, I was the editor this month, and it was definitely a pretty busy beginning of the month, but we have some pretty awesome things that we're showing off there. So do check that out. And I think I'll probably try to post to Twitter right after this with all the stuff that's going on there. The Bevy Jam ended, I feel like last week sometime, but the voting period is still open. And so if you want to go check out the different Bevy games that were created, I think there was like 80 submissions or something along those lines. So that's really awesome to see. And I'm really happy with like the fact that we're seeing more game jams in the Rust Gamedev ecosystem. And so I don't have details on when the next Rusty Jam is. I do want to try pushing for it now that things are starting to cool down a little bit with a lot of stuff that I have going on. But we will be seeing that, I think, later this month or in April. Well, yeah, coming March. I left this slide here. Oh my gosh, I did not refresh this page. Meeting is not back because I have not spent time in getting that set up. All right, so we are at the end of today's presentation. Come hang out with us on Discord. I hope that we can have a few of the speakers there. And there's a lot of stuff that I think was really cool today that would be awesome to discuss more in detail. So come stop by there. And with that, we'll end off this month. And yeah, hopefully you have a great month, and we will see you next time.